Humanity never expected the galaxy to notice them. For most of their early history, they were simply trying to survive their own storms, their own wars, and their own restless curiosity. Yet beyond the thin blue atmosphere, entire civilizations had already catalogued thousands of species, ranking them by strength, intelligence, and usefulness. When humans finally registered on their sensors, they were filed into a quiet, unimpressive category: volatile primates with limited technological promise. A footnote. A temporary species. Something to observe, not engage. But for all their measurements and classifications, alien scholars missed the one trait that would make humanity impossible to ignore: they did not break. Not under pressure, not under fear, not even under hopeless odds. This resilience didn't announce itself with glory or spectacle. It appeared in small, stubborn moments: people rebuilding cities after disasters, explorers crossing oceans with no guarantee of return, families adapting through famine, war, disease. Humanity did not merely survive suffering. They adapted to it, learned from it, and in many cases, overcame it with an optimism that defied logic. To outside observers, this should have been a warning sign. Instead, it was dismissed as primitive emotionalism. The first alien records that mentioned humans described them as unpredictably cooperative. When faced with threats, they banded together with a speed that startled observers. When presented with the unknown, they didn't freeze, they reached toward it, questions first, fear second. When one human struggled, others stepped in without hesitation, even at personal risk. This behavior baffled the analysts who assumed self-preservation would always dominate. They did not understand a species whose strength lay in empathy and whose weakness was also empathy. Humans cared too much, tried too hard, and miscalculated danger because they valued something beyond survival. No algorithm could account for that. Over time, as humans launched satellites and probes, the galaxy watched with a detached curiosity. These small machines, clumsy by interstellar standards, carried messages, not weapons. They announced the existence of a species eager to meet the universe, armed with nothing but questions and earnest hope. That naive optimism was mistaken for ignorance. No one asked how a species with no natural armor, no natural weapons, and no natural advantages had managed to outlive so many planetary challenges. No one wondered why they kept pushing forward despite constant hardship. What finally drew real attention was not humanity's technology but their patterns. Aliens noticed they consistently reached beyond their limits. When something did not exist, they created it. When they failed, they tried again. When they encountered boundaries, biological, environmental, intellectual, they broke them down methodically. This behavior defied centuries of galactic logic. Species advanced cautiously, prioritizing stability. Humanity surged forward with almost reckless momentum, driven by a need to understand, to connect, to improve. It wasn't brilliance that frightened observers. It was determination. As humans prepared to leave their solar system for the first time, speculation spread across distant star nations. Some believed humanity would crumble the moment they faced superior species. Others predicted assimilation or irrelevance. A smaller, quieter group, scientists who had studied the early human broadcasts, argued something different. They saw a pattern in humanity's history. Whenever pushed to a breaking point, humans did not retreat. They transformed. Every crisis became an engine for progress. Every limitation became a challenge. Every threat became motivation. The galaxy had encountered aggressive species before, intelligent ones before, compassionate ones before, but never all three intertwined within a single relentless drive. The event that truly marked the beginning of humanity's place in the galaxy was small, almost negligible. An automated long-range probe malfunctioned near a derelict alien relay. Instead of abandoning it, humans tracked it, repaired it, and repurposed it to send a message outward, an introduction, a promise of cooperation, and a declaration that they were ready to step into the larger universe. The message was simple, hopeful, and deeply human. To the civilizations watching, it was puzzling. Why repair something unfamiliar? Why send kindness into the void? Why invite attention from the unknown? They didn't yet understand that for humans, the unknown was not something to fear, it was a call. And this call would bring humanity to the center of a galaxy that had no idea what was coming. You said? Humanity's first contact did not happen with fanfare or ceremony. It occurred through an accidental interception of a distress signal drifting across an uncharted corridor of space. The signal was faint, barely coherent, but the moment human analysts decoded a plea for help, they treated it as a call to action. No debate. No hesitation. A small exploratory vessel altered course, burning through fuel reserves it could not afford to spare. On board, the crew moved with a determined calm that alien observers would later describe as reckless compassion. They did not know who needed help, what dangers waited ahead, or whether the signal was a trap. It didn't matter. Someone was in danger. That was enough. When the human vessel arrived, they found a crippled alien transport drifting helplessly. The species, fragile, photosynthetic beings accustomed to controlled environments, expected aggression or indifference. Instead, humans greeted them with warmth, offering supplies and engineering assistance. While repairing the damaged hull, the human crew improvised tools from scrap metal, rewired unfamiliar systems through trial and error, and kept morale high with casual jokes despite the severity of the situation. The aliens watched with confusion as humans worked tirelessly, motivated by nothing but the belief that saving strangers was the obvious thing to do. Rumors of this encounter spread faster than official reports. Alien diplomats struggled to understand a species that offered help without strategic gain. Their psychological profiles insisted that fear of the unknown should dominate early interactions. But humans behaved differently. They treated danger as a problem to solve, not a barrier. They treated new species as potential allies, not potential threats. They displayed curiosity where caution should have prevailed. What unsettled the galaxy most was not human bravery, it was their ease with which they acted on it. Soon after, humanity was invited to its first interstellar summit, mostly out of curiosity and caution. Delegates from older civilizations expected timid newcomers overwhelmed by the scale of the galaxy. Instead, humans arrived with open expressions, unpolished diplomatic habits, and a directness that disregarded centuries of rigid protocol. They asked questions without fear of offending, proposed ideas that ignored political hierarchies, and laughed openly in environments where silence was tradition. Some species found their presence refreshing, others found it dangerously unpredictable. The turning point came during a hazardous atmospheric collapse on a neutral station orbiting a binary star. When containment shields failed, toxic gases flooded the lower levels. Most species evacuated immediately, following strict safety mandates. Humans did the opposite. A group of engineers and medics sprinted toward the collapsing sectors, sealing bulkheads manually and pulling strangers to safety while inhaling fumes that would incapacitate nearly any other species. Their protective gear was insufficient, their plan improvised, yet they pushed through with unwavering determination. When questioned later, their explanation was simple: people were trapped. No further justification needed. This incident shattered the remaining assumptions. Analysts recalibrated their models, trying to quantify the human tendency to risk themselves for others. They documented their adaptability, the ability to survive temperature ranges that horrified cold-blooded species, endure environments low-oxygen species found lethal, and navigate chaos with unnerving efficiency. Their biology was considered average, their behavior was anything but. As humanity integrated further into galactic society, they displayed another trait that defied prediction: creative problem-solving under extreme pressure. When confronted with technologies they barely understood, they absorbed information at a startling pace, bypassing traditional training cycles. They experimented fearlessly, sometimes clumsily, often brilliantly. What other species took years to master, humans attempted within days, driven by a mixture of curiosity, impatience, and relentless trial and error. Their methods appeared chaotic, but the results spoke otherwise. Whispers spread through diplomatic halls and military councils alike. Some called humans inspiring. Others called them dangerous. A species that smiled while exhausted, joked in the face of crisis, and treated impossibility as a personal insult unsettled civilizations comfortable with predictability. Humanity's presence challenged assumptions long considered universal. They formed bonds quickly, negotiated with sincerity, and responded to hostility with either unexpected kindness or unexpected ferocity, depending on what the moment demanded. What the galaxy learned, slowly and with growing unease, was that humans were not defined by strength or technology. Their true power came from the way they approached every situation, with heart, grit, and a stubborn refusal to stand aside when action was required. And this discovery marked the beginning of a reputation that would shift the balance of interstellar civilization. Humanity did not wait for permission to make a difference. They simply stepped forward. The galaxy had weathered countless dangers, yet the threat that emerged now was unlike anything recorded. It began as a silent pattern, stations going dark, trade routes collapsing without evidence of battle, entire outposts vanishing as if swallowed by the void. At first, the older civilizations dismissed the warnings as anomalies. They preferred analysis to action, models to risk. Caution had preserved them for millennia, and they clung to it. But when sensor arrays caught the first clear signature of the anomaly, a self-replicating swarm feeding on energy, matter, and even data, the scale of the crisis became undeniable. The entity expanded with mechanical precision, consuming everything it touched. It had no mind, no motive, no negotiation. It was a hunger made physical. Panic rippled across star nations. Councils convened emergency sessions, arguing over evacuation routes, territorial sacrifices, and containment zones. The consensus was bleak: the swarm could not be confronted directly. Any fleet that approached it vanished within minutes. Planetary shields failed as quickly as they were raised. For the first time in generations, the galaxy's dominant empires found themselves helpless. Their strategies relied on caution and predictable enemies. This threat respected neither. It advanced with single-minded inevitability, and each moment of hesitation allowed it to gain more territory. When humanity received the first fragmented reports, they didn't wait for permission or political alignment. Their first question was not how to retreat, but how to stop it. Analysts broke down swarm behavior, engineers examined energy signatures, and commanders considered risks the rest of the galaxy refused to entertain. Humans saw patterns, weaknesses invisible to those who believed the swarm unbeatable. They proposed boarding operations deemed suicidal, disruption tactics calculated to fail, and field tests conducted far too close to the swarm's expansion line. Other species dismissed these ideas as desperation born of inexperience. But humans were not motivated by ignorance. They were motivated by refusal to accept inevitable loss. As entire sectors continued to collapse, humans organized a coalition task group of volunteers. They studied every fragment of debris from consumed stations, dissecting residue and analyzing molecular breakdown. They worked without sleep, driven by urgency. Their approach was different from the galaxy's typical deliberation. Where others feared catastrophic failure, humans treated failure as data. Every dead end revealed something new. Every miscalculation pointed to a new angle of attack. They narrowed the swarm's core structure to a network of energy nodes, vulnerable in theory, unreachable in practice. But theory was enough to push humanity forward. When the swarm targeted a refugee convoy from 3 separate species, the galaxy braced for another disappearance. Instead, humans intercepted it. Their ships were inferior in shielding and firepower, yet they held position long enough to buy the convoy time to escape. The engagement ended badly for them. Several vessels were lost. But it was the first time the swarm had been slowed. Observers couldn't comprehend why humans willingly threw themselves into an unwinnable confrontation. Humanity's explanation was direct: people were in danger, and inaction was worse than death. This mindset unsettled every major power. They didn't understand how a species could operate under such emotional logic without fracturing. Yet humans functioned best under pressure. They coordinated with an instinctive cohesion that baffled rigid hierarchies. When the swarm began adapting to weapons fire, humans shifted tactics mid-battle without waiting for command authorization. Their adaptability kept them alive where other species failed. As losses mounted across the galaxy, humanity intensified their efforts. They developed crude but effective disruptors capable of destabilizing swarm fragments, though only at close range. No one else volunteered to deploy them. Humans did. They boarded crippled stations overtaken by swarm residue, searching for clues in collapsing structures where every second meant exposure to lethal energy. Their willingness to operate in environments already abandoned as lost changed the course of the investigation. The breakthrough came when human researchers identified a rhythm in the swarm's consumption patterns, an oscillation that created momentary structural instability. Exploiting it required precision bordering on insanity. Every other species deemed the operation impossible. Humanity prepared without hesitation. They understood the stakes. If no one acted, there would soon be nothing left to save. Their resolve forced the galaxy to acknowledge an uncomfortable truth. Where ancient empires hesitated, humanity moved. Where logic dictated abandonment, humanity resisted. Their courage was not showmanship, it was instinct. And as the swarm advanced, the galaxy began to realize that the only species willing to stand between civilization and annihilation was the one they had once dismissed as insignificant. Humanity's plan to stop the swarm was not elegant, diplomatic, or remotely safe. It was a brutal mix of engineering audacity and sheer nerve. The strategy revolved around the instability pattern identified in the swarm's energy lattice, a cyclical flicker that lasted only moments. If they could strike precisely during that microscopic window, they could destabilize the swarm's core structure long enough to force a collapse. Every simulation predicted catastrophic losses. Humans accepted that before the simulations finished rendering. They assembled a strike group composed entirely of volunteers. No one was drafted, no one was pressured. Engineers, pilots, technicians, medics, every role filled by individuals who understood exactly what they were signing up for. They modified their ships with hastily assembled disruptor arrays that overheated after minutes, sometimes seconds. Hulls were reinforced with scavenged plating. Navigation systems were stripped down to make room for power rerouting. Every vessel was held together by determination as much as metal. The galaxy watched the preparations with disbelief. No other species considered joining. The mission was a death run, and centuries of caution had conditioned them to avoid unwinnable battles. But to humanity, unwinnable did not mean meaningless. The goal wasn't survival. It was creating a chance, a single opening for the galaxy to inherit a future. When the strike group launched, they entered a region where no signals returned. Wreckage of previous fleets floated in frozen silence. The swarm pulsed like a monstrous storm, devouring light and matter in a widening spiral. Human ships pushed forward, weaving through debris fields that still carried traces of melted civilizations. Pilots flew with a calm intensity born from acceptance. They understood the assignment: get close enough, endure long enough, and deliver the blow. As they approached the swarm's core cluster, the first wave of interference hit. Instruments flickered, sensors warped, comms deteriorated. Human crews switched to manual controls, relying on instinct and muscle memory. Their ability to function under conditions that left others paralyzed became their greatest asset. They advanced into the swarm's feeding zone, their ships shaking under the strain. Disruptor arrays overloaded, firing in unpredictable bursts. It didn't matter. Every moment closer increased the odds of success. The swarm reacted with lethal efficiency, redirecting tendrils of consuming energy toward the intruders. Human vessels buckled as armor vaporized and internal systems detonated. Yet even as ships fell apart, the crews extracted every last second of stability, pushing their vessels further than they were ever designed to go. Each ship that collapsed under the swarm's assault created a ripple of interference that subtly weakened the collective structure. Unintentional sacrifices still counted. As the instability cycle approached, the remaining vessels synchronized manually, timing disruptor charges through visual cues and raw instinct. There was no longer any unified command, just shared purpose. They fired in unison during the exact heartbeat where the swarm's lattice flickered. The blast tore through the core cluster, fracturing the repeating pattern that sustained its replication. The swarm convulsed, its energy web spasming as the human strike forced the first genuine disruption since its emergence. But the swarm adapted quickly, attempting to restabilize. The humans saw the collapse faltering and took the final step. Damaged ships rammed directly into the exposed lattice points, detonating their reactors at point-blank range. These were not desperate losses. They were deliberate, coordinated actions executed by crews who had committed long before launch. The chain of detonations created a cascading failure inside the swarm's core, triggering a runaway collapse that spread outward like a shockwave. Light burst across the void as the swarm's structure imploded. Energy dissipated in violent pulses, tearing apart segments that had once seemed indestructible. When the shockwave settled, the monstrous mass was gone. Only drifting fragments remained, harmless, inert, and scattered like ashes. Across the galaxy, silence followed the victory. Humanity had done what every advanced civilization believed impossible. They did it not through superior technology or numerical strength, but through a willingness to give everything when the stakes demanded it. Their sacrifice became a turning point etched into the collective memory of countless species. The galaxy finally understood a truth they had overlooked. Humanity's power was not measured in weapons or fleets. It was measured in resolve. Those who survived the mission, few as they were, returned carrying the weight of what had been lost and the knowledge of what they had saved. And the galaxy, once dismissive, now looked at humanity with a mixture of awe, gratitude, and a quiet fear of what such determination could accomplish when aimed at any goal, noble or otherwise. The collapse of the swarm left a void the galaxy didn't know how to fill. For countless worlds, survival had seemed impossible only days earlier. Now, with the threat extinguished, civilizations that once viewed humanity with mild curiosity or cautious distance found themselves grappling with a new reality. Their salvation had come from the very species they had underestimated. Reports from the aftermath painted the same picture across every recovering region. Human engineers assisting reconstruction, human medics treating survivors from species they had never met, human diplomats coordinating relief with a clarity born not from authority but from sincere intention. They didn't arrive as conquerors or victors. They arrived as people who believed duty did not end when the danger passed. On neutral stations, refugees spoke about the humans who stayed behind after the swarms collapsed to search for survivors, even when debris fields were unstable and rescue vessels advised withdrawal. This behavior confused many cultures accustomed to strict recovery limits. Humans dismissed the confusion with a simple statement: someone might still be alive. That was justification enough. It became common to see humans guiding groups of displaced families, offering food from their own supplies, organizing shelters, or repairing damaged infrastructure with whatever tools they could salvage. Alien governments observed this with growing respect. They had expected humanity to demand influence, territory, or compensation. Instead, humans rejected negotiations involving reward. Their only request was cooperation in rebuilding the sectors the swarm had devastated. That refusal to turn heroism into leverage unsettled many political leaders. Power in the galaxy was usually earned through dominance or longevity. Humanity had earned it through sacrifice, and their reluctance to exploit that new standing made them even more unpredictable. Cultural shifts followed. Species that once dismissed human customs now adopted elements of them. Soldiers trained in human-style adaptability drills. Diplomatic academies added courses on direct communication inspired by human negotiation tactics. Even everyday language began to shift as phrases like human margin, meaning effort beyond expectation, became common idioms. Monuments were built across several worlds honoring the volunteers lost during the strike. While the designs varied by culture, they all carried a shared theme: recognition of a species willing to risk everything for those they barely knew. For the scientists who analyzed the aftermath, the most unsettling revelation was not the collapse of the swarm but the psychological implications of humanity's involvement. They documented the pattern clearly. Humans reacted first, acted fastest, sacrificed deepest, and recovered quickest. They were driven by conviction rather than calculation. Some leaders praised this trait as the heart of a new era of interstellar unity. Others quietly feared what such a species might do if provoked or cornered. Respect and apprehension grew side by side. The survivors of the strike group became symbols, though none of them sought the attention. Their accounts were factual, unembellished, and often uncomfortable for interviewers expecting grand speeches. They spoke about the ones who didn't return with a quiet weight that needed no dramatization. Their statements carried a consistent message: they acted because someone had to. That mindset resonated across the galaxy more deeply than any formal treaty. It taught ancient powers something they had forgotten: courage was not an inherited trait but a conscious choice. As Reconstruction stabilized, humanity received invitations to alliances previously closed to younger civilizations. Even the most isolationist species opened guarded communication channels. But despite the sudden shift in status, humans remained focused on the practical work of rebuilding. Their leaders reminded the galaxy that the goal was not influence but stability. Their humility did not weaken their reputation, it strengthened it. Species began requesting human advisors, human engineers, human mediators, not because humanity demanded it, but because they inspired trust. In time, a broader recognition settled over the galaxy. Humanity had proven they were not defined by their technology, size, or age. Their strength came from the principles guiding every decision they made: protect the vulnerable, challenge the impossible, and never accept a fate that could still be changed. The galaxy now saw humanity not as newcomers, but as essential participants in shaping its future. The memory of the swarm's defeat became a reminder of what humans represented. They were the ones who ran toward catastrophe when logic demanded retreat. They were the ones who held the line when others hesitated. And in a universe filled with uncertainty, that unwavering, stubborn spark became something civilizations learned to rely on. Humanity had stepped into the galaxy not as an afterthought but as a force whose greatest weapon was their refusal to let fear decide the outcome.